Shalom to everybody from Jerusalem. I'm Efraim Inbar, and I was entrusted by the head of the institute, Brigadier General Yosef Kupperwasser, to chair this webinar on Israel's Gaza campaign. Israel is fighting already almost 20 months, and there are indications for planning to expand the campaign in Gaza, and it is obviously a critical junction in Israel's effort to overcome Hamas in Gaza. And we have collected a group of experts. The first one that will speak is Major General Reserve Yaakov Amidror. He's Anne and Greg Rossander Senior Fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. General Amidror was National Security Advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu and Chairman of the National Security Council. He served for 36 years in senior IDF posts, including commander of the military colleges, the military secretary to the Minister of Defense, the director of the Intelligence Analysis Division in Military Intelligence, and Chief Intelligence of the Northern Command. He is also a distinguished fellow at the JISS Gemunder Center. He is the author of 3 books on intelligence and military strategy. And it's your floor, General Amidror.
Good afternoon from Israel. I'm glad to be here and to speak about the operation in Gaza. I'll speak about the strategic level. I allow my colleagues to speak about the other elements, including the operational military side. I think that for Israel, there are today 2 schools of thought. One saying that the most important goal of Israel in this time, after succeeding to neutralize the ability of Hamas to attack Israel from within the Gaza Strip, is to bring back the hostages, and the price should be paid. Israel will retreat from Gaza. Probably Hamas will have the opportunity to be strong again, and Israel will find the excuse, the time, whatever, to eliminate Hamas in the future. Yes, it will be much harder, but today the most important goal is to bring the hostages back home. The second school of thought, and this is probably the one which the government adopted in the cabinet decision, is that Israel should go to eliminate Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. It's not enough to the success to eliminate it as a threat to Israel from within the Gaza Strip. It should be eliminated within the Gaza Strip. And only then we can achieve the release of the hostages. Hamas will be under pressure, under elimination, and in a new situation, they will be ready to release the hostages. And Israel will have in a position to determine the next day in Gaza by allowing any third party to go inside and to have responsibility for the civilian side. Israel will remain the responsible for the security in Gaza. In a way, it will be something which not exactly, but similar, not similar, but probably the good example is Area A and B in the West Bank, in which the Palestinian Authority is responsible for the civilian side, and Israel is responsible and have the freedom to act inside based on its intelligence against all elements which might build their capabilities inside the Gaza Strip in the future. And this is the optimum that Israel can achieve. The whole area will be controlled security-wise by Israel and civilian-wise by a third party. There is no any decision in Israel if it will be the Palestinian Authority, another Arab state, combination between that and and the Arab state and the Palestinian Authority, or even a Western state which will contribute to the change that the reform that the Palestinian Authority supposed to go through, if you hear what the Americans have in mind. But it is clear that the security will be in the hands of Israel after Israel eliminating the whole military capability of Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. So the decision of today to extend the operation in Gaza, probably after the visit of President Trump in the Middle East, not to make it parallel to this visit, and that can be seen from the preparation of the IDF, that it is very imminent, is to reconquer the whole parts of Gaza, evacuating all the civilians to one or two areas, to find all those that we can identify as terrorist members of Hamas in the process of moving the civilians inside the Gaza Strip from one place to another, and to have area with very, very little amount of civilians in which we will have to fight and to destroy all Hamas facilities and to kill all Hamas members. At the end of the day, it's a long process. Everyone in Iran understands it. People are speaking about a year or 2 year operation during which we will have to clean Gaza completely, and only then to bring in those who will be responsible for the Gaza civilian and rebuild what we are calling the day after. Today, it's too early to speak about it. Hamas is too strong. No third party is crazy enough to go into Gaza Strip anyhow. So the expectations are here in Israel is that after the cleaning of the Gaza Strip, a third party will be found. As I said, we are still arguing who is the third party, and there are not so many volunteers for that job. So at the end of the day, it will probably my assessment is it will be a combination between the Palestinian Authority and Arab states with help from the Western countries. To rebuild Gaza, someone will have to bring, I don't know, $30–50 billion, not less than that. So it is clear that the Palestinian Authority cannot do it. Israel do not want to do it. And a lot of money will come. If will come money, it will come from Arab states and maybe some elements around the world. For us, it's very important that anti-Israeli countries will not be involved. Turkey is a good example. The Turks might be in a position that they want to help because they want to help Hamas. Their ideology is equivalent to the ideology of Hamas. They will be more than happy to be in Gaza Strip and to put pressure on Israel. And Israel doesn't want a country like Turkey to be involved. There are other countries that we don't want to be, that they will be involved. Qatar is another good example. But how you build something that will be good enough for Israel and will be ready to invest in the Gaza Strip and to secure at least the civilian life of the Palestinians, which are now horrible. It's a battlefield, and Palestinians are living within the battlefield. So this is the challenge of the new plans of the IDF. But as I said, the goal is clear: Israeli full security responsibility in the Gaza Strip. Hamas does not exist as a military threat within the Gaza Strip, not just as it is today from the Gaza Strip into Israel, and someone be responsible for the civilian life when Israel has the responsibility for the overall security of the Gaza Strip, and it is going to be a long and very, very, how to say, tense and operation in the next, I don't know, year or two.
That's it. Okay. Our second speaker is Professor Colonel Reserve Gabi Siboni. He's a senior researcher at JISS. He's an expert on cybersecurity, military strategy, and technology. Professor Siboni was director of the Military and Strategic Affairs Program and the Cyber Research Program at the Institute, at the INSS, where he founded academic journals on this matter. He served as senior consultant to the IDF and other Israeli security organization and the military industry in Israel. Gabi, it's your floor.
Thank you. May I start from the ending of Yaakov Amidror, my friend? I want to have a statement about the rehabilitation of Gaza. There is no such thing as the ability to rehabilitate Gaza. It's not an issue of building roads and schools and construction. It's rehabilitating the population, and the population is so brainwashed that regardless of the existence of Hamas, even if Hamas is eliminated, even if Hamas is exiled from Gaza, this population will produce a new Hamas, and we will have to fight in Gaza for tens and tens of years. So I don't see any ability to rehabilitate Gaza. It's not related to money at all. Having said that, it's what are the consequences of what I say? It means that Gazans, if we leave the population of Gaza in Gaza, regardless of any governing, technocrat governing, or whatever, we bring people from Sweden or from the US or from the Emirates, they will, the internal energy and an internal cognitive state of mind will make us need to fight again in Gaza. And if we do not want our grandchildren and the grandchildren of our grandchildren to fight in Gaza, we need to follow the vision of Trump, regardless if Trump just said it just as an anecdote or not. We need to follow this vision and to stick to it. We need to make sure that Gaza is empty of Gazans. This is the only way we will not shed our blood for tens of years. Now, how do we achieve this? First of all, this upcoming operation, the immediate goal is to eliminate Hamas. How do we eliminate Hamas? The main, let's say, asset of Hamas, if we put the hostages, which are an amazing asset for Hamas, the main asset of Hamas is the connection between Hamas and the population. We need to break this connection. We will use, I believe that's what we should do, and hopefully we will do. We will use humanitarian aid to provide only humanitarian aid in areas that the IDF will have full control on the humanitarian aid distribution. The actual distribution can be done by international companies. It's not an issue. However, anyone from Gaza, which is not Hamas, that will be in need for humanitarian aid, we are obliged, because we are in a state of war, we are obliged to provide only food, water, shelter, and basic medical aid. We will do that only in areas that are in full control by the IDF. Currently, for example, south to what we call the Morag corridor, which is around Rafah and other areas that IDF have full control. So once we isolate Hamas between Hamas between the population and Hamas, we will be able to fight Hamas in a more aggressive and free way, and to start hitting Hamas while it cannot use the population as their human shield. This is the challenge that we need to follow. However, I think that this is the only way. We have to understand that the issue of Gaza, the operational issues of Gaza, do not relate to what we call the actual blue lines, the lines of the attack if you come from the left or the right, if you do a right flank or whatever you want to do operationally. It's only the issue of the civilian behavior. That's what we have. Unfortunately, we have exhausted the credit that the people of Israel have given the IDF and our government throughout the past fighting, while the security establishment, including the former Minister of Defense and the IDF commander, refused to take control of the civilian aspect of operation, and this is why we need to fight again after some 20 months of fighting. Hopefully, the new command of the IDF, together with our cabinet and the Minister of Defense, have changed this paradigm, and we are going to take control of the humanitarian supply and make sure that it only arrives the population and not Hamas. This is the main issue. Now, regarding the hostages, it is a very important goal of war. However, the cost of accepting Hamas terms, which are, as been stated again, which are to take the IDF outside completely of Gaza Strip, including the perimeter, the security perimeter, including the Philadelphia corridor, and providing Hamas with the ability to rehabilitate itself, to take over governing, and to plan for the new 7th of October, this is completely not acceptable. We need first to achieve our strategic goals, and hopefully that the hostages will be able to free them by pressure of operational pressure on Hamas, combined with humanitarian pressure, or not human for Hamas. It's not humanitarian. We'll simply put them on siege, not providing them any supplies. Now, I have to say something that is not very popular to say, that we will do the best we can to free our hostages. However, we have to acknowledge the fact that some of them will never be released, because Hamas will never release, and probably we will not be able to free them. So this is also something to put on proportion, while we have in Israel a discussion that really an impossible discussion, trying to say, okay, relieve the hostages, as if this is the main goal of war. I want to remind our audience that during the Second World War, the Jewish community have asked the Allies to bomb Auschwitz, while knowing that they will kill tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Jews that are in Auschwitz. This was not done eventually by the Allies. However, the actual request was a moral request, and this is the same as we are. I know the hostages is a very sensitive issue. However, we have to put it in the context of the whole war, and we cannot relieve ourselves of achieving our goals of war only for the sake of releasing hostages. Also, I will tell you one other point, that just assume that as we finish, assume that we will be able to relieve all our hostages. Hamas or any other enemy of Israel will kidnap again 2, 3, 10 Israelis, soldiers, civilians. Then what we will do then? This is a cycle we have to stop. And I think it is time we have to stop it now. So we need to work according to our basic strategic needs. And I think I've stated the way to achieve them in Gaza. Thank you, Efraim.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brigadier General in Reserve, Erez Wiener. He finished his career, as we understand, as Brigadier General, a career that consisted of different commands and managerial roles. He's still holding a senior role in strategic planning in his reserve duty. He was during the war, and probably continues to serve in the Southern Command. and he's now active in the private sector. Erez, it's your floor, but unmute yourself.
Thank you. Well, since my two distinguished colleagues have spoken about how this war should be continued, I would try maybe to look backwards after such a long war and to ask what was our biggest mistakes. And I think that if I have to sum them, it's two. And two major mistakes that we did. One was that Gabi mentioned, was not willing to take care of the security and the civil administration, which is against the international rules and concepts of war. And I think that if you would take three generals from different armies and put the Gaza issue as an example or as an exam, they will all come with the same resolution that you cannot fight and you cannot, of course, win a war against a terror organization operating among civilian population without taking care of the population and on the civil administration as well. And this is maybe the biggest tragic mistake that we did. And for many, many months, we were attacking and we were achieving very admirable goals against Hamas in one hand and feeding him and financing him on the other. And that's what helped Hamas to stay on its feet for such a long war after suffering all the casualties and all the damages that the IDF has created. The second big mistake was the way that we as a nation, that we as a state, that we as an entity have dealt with the tragic and very, very complicated issues of the hostages in Gaza. I will try not to repeat on Gabi's words, but this war was maybe the war with the most accurate and specific goals that Israel have known from the independence war till today. And I think that the goals that was written in a certain way, in certain words, was written that way after serious people have thought about what they wrote. And I think that the reason that the first goal of this war was to demolish, to destroy Hamas militarily and Hamas as a government, as a ruling entity in Gaza. I think that this first goal was not written first just by a mistake or by accuracy. It was written first because in order to get to the point that you can really bring back the hostages, you first need to unroll Hamas from his regime and from his abilities. And while we started by doing so, the first, I think, 2 months of the Israeli attack in Gaza, from the beginning of the ground maneuver on October 27 till more or less the end of November, we saw a very decisive attack, unfortunately only in the north, but a very decisive attack using ground forces and achieving all the goals that we were looking for, and entering not even a drop of humanitarian aid to Gaza. And by doing those two things together, we've managed to get to the first ceasefire, the first hostages agreement, that brought back more than 100 hostages with a much smaller price than from what we are due to pay now if we want to continue. And after that, things have been gone aside. First, as I mentioned before, the humanitarian aid entering Gaza freely, and just to open and do maybe answer a question that might be asked, Biden administration was forcing Israel to bring in humanitarian aid. Biden administration didn't say to Israel how to bring it in. They want us to bring in 200, 250 trucks per day to the Gazan people. But if Israel would do so by ways that we are considering now to bring the aid inside, but to be in charge of how it will be actually reach the final destination, and not just sending it in, and most of it, if not all of it, will fall to the hand of Hamas, I think that the results that we were getting were totally different. And unfortunately, the big conflict that we saw inside the Israel society and the political elements who we wrote together and published here in the Institute with Professor Siboni, the kidnapped, who were kidnapped twice, because some elements in the Israel politics have taken custody on that issue, and the debate inside Israel helped Hamas to gain the price higher and higher and higher, and brought us to the situation that we are in today. And General Amidror was mentioning in his words in the beginning about the two concepts, or about the conflict between the two different ideas, and I don't think that there are two. I think there is one false narrative of let's stop the war, surrender to Hamas, bring them everything they want, and let them stay in Gaza and rebuild themselves, and maybe get most of the hostages back, because as Professor Siboni has said, they won't be back, all of them, or do it on the right way, the way that I think that Israel should, and hopefully will do so now, late, but better late than ever, and by attacking Hamas on a very firm and decisive way, simultaneously, alongside with taking care of the humanitarian and the civilian support, and this plus that will, as I believe, shortly will bring Hamas to a point that either will ask to give up and live like Yasser Arafat in 82 in Beirut, or if not, will stay in Gaza, but under the ground and not in the tunnels. Thank you.
Thank you, Erez. Our fourth speaker is Major Andrew Fox. Welcome to JISS webinars. Andrew Fox is a retired British major who served from 2005 to 2021. During his military career, he completed 3 operational tours in Afghanistan. He survived, including one with US Special Forces. He served in the Parachute Regiment and Special Forces Support Group, and also was deployed in Bosnia, Middle East, and Northern Ireland. After leaving the military, Andrew Fox lectured at the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst in both the War Studies and Behavioral Science departments. He holds a degree in law and politics, modern war studies, and psychology. Currently, he is research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, specializing in security, the Middle East, and disinformation. Andrew, it's your floor.
Thank you, and I'm very proud to be a new associate fellow at JISS as well. So thank you for the invitation to join you. Hello from Oslo, where I've been speaking at an Israel rally in the center of Oslo this afternoon. So I've had my whole afternoon being screamed at by Palestinians. So I have a certain empathy for your position at the moment. I think there are some interesting issues that everyone has raised, and I think there comes a really key question that I don't think has been answered yet when we talk about strategy is where do we actually want to get to at a political level? And I think we can talk all day about the Trump plan or about turning Gaza into a variation of Judea and Samaria, Oslo Area A. But actually, are we looking for a lasting peace? Are we looking for an eventual two-state solution? Are we looking for just the security to be under control? Because I think with the latter, as Gabi said, if there is an existing sort of Palestinian presence, there is always going to be that tension and conflict, where your grandchildren may still be facing these same security issues. On the flip side of that, it becomes, I think, very difficult on a geopolitical scale for the Trump plan to be enacted. And there's two reasons behind that. I think, first of all, Israel will see a bout of lawfare in courts like the ICJ that would make the current genocide case look like the easiest thing in the world. You would have ethnic cleansing accusations, Israeli athletes not being able to travel, Israeli soldiers being arrested in foreign countries should they go there. So on the geopolitical stage, that is a very difficult solution. The other thing is, where do these Palestinians go if you move them from Gaza, and what happens to the countries they go to? If we look at the situation in Jordan now, it's starting to look very, very shaky in terms of the enduring nature of the Hashemite dynasty. Certainly, if I'm the mullahs in Tehran, with the failure of my proxy force in Lebanon and with the failure of my ally in Syria, I think I'm going to be looking at Jordan as low-hanging fruit, as a target to destabilize and collapse that country. And the addition of 1 or 2 million Gazans, I think, would hasten that demise, which would, of course, cause another huge security issue for Israel further down the line. So none of these solutions that we're proposing have grand strategic, easy answers. When it comes to looking at Gaza itself, I think we must return to Mao and go back to the core of counterinsurgency thinking, where the insurgent swims amongst the people like the fish swims in the sea. And at the core of all thinking on counterinsurgency, whether we look at Kilcullen or Galula or any of the thinkers, separating the insurgent from the people is the challenge. Now, in Gaza, that might be something you can do physically, as some of the plans that we've heard suggested might support, where the people live in a separate area that's guarded with humanitarian aid, enabling the IDF to then take the fight to Hamas, the current insurgent. But what I don't think that does is separate the people conceptually from the guerrilla fight. You may separate them physically, but you're not separating them conceptually. And I think the chances of having any kind of governance in Gaza that's run by Palestinians and is in any way amenable to the existence of the state of Israel is very unlikely. I don't think there is an immediate solution when it comes to finding anything in Palestinian governance that would be even neutral towards Israel, never mind not an active enemy. So we have this strategic bind. It's a strategic conflict because on the one hand, the Trump plan seems like a good idea on the surface, but causes enormous geopolitical dramas for Israel further down the line and for the Middle East more broadly. And on the flip side, we're looking at committing the IDF to a 2-3 year counterinsurgency operation where there's no guarantee of peace at the end of it if Palestinian civilians remain in Gaza. So neither of these options presents an easy solution. And of course, the final issue of the hostages has been spoken about time and time again, but there is that core strategic conflict between the goal of destroying Hamas and the goal of returning the hostages. And that is a very difficult conversation that Israel is going to have with itself. And we can see, I think at a political level, it's very obvious why Bibi hasn't made a decision on this publicly, because nobody would be happy with that. And people would be brutally unhappy if he announced that he was abandoning the hostages. But they are a complicating factor. And we have to think, when we're talking about strategy, looking at political strategy, there is going to be a fight for survival of the current Israeli government. And any acknowledgement that those hostages aren't being prioritized is going to damage on a political level. So I think this is a situation fraught with tension. It's a wicked problem. None of the solutions are perfect. And it's going to be a difficult military planning session to work out what the worst outcome might be. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I'll add my two-cent thinking. Speaking about solutions, I think it's not useful. There are illusions about the day after, bringing Arab forces or other forces. None of those forces will fight for us. We should not relegate to any other country responsibility for Israel's security, which means that we'll have to stay there in a way or another. There are two radical solutions. One is Trump's plan. I doubt if it's viable. And the other one is re-education of the whole Palestinian people, which I don't think is possible, at least not in the near future. So wherever there are Palestinians, we should recognize there will be terror against Israel. And we should make sure that in Gaza we'll have freedom of military action. This is the goal of any war of Israel in Gaza. And I think that in Gaza we are facing something similar to a Taliban situation. There was an attempt to remove Taliban, but it didn't succeed. I think the Israeli attempt to remove Hamas, like sending the PLO out of Tunis, might be successful, but the ideology is there, the motivation is there, particularly after the suffering of this war by the Palestinians. So the enmity, the hostility, the hatred will stay there. And in the absence of being liked, we'll have to fight. And probably the best possibility, which I doubt it will happen, is a situation like in Judea and Samaria, in which we have freedom of action, military action. But probably what will happen in Gaza, if we are successful in expanding the campaign, there will be chaos. And I don't think we should be afraid of chaos, because chaos allows Israel military freedom of action. Not only that, a Somalia type of Gaza will give Israel legitimacy, international legitimacy, to act there freely, and might encourage emigration. Most, I don't know the exact numbers, but there are clear polls that show that a large number of Gazans, particularly among the young, want to emigrate. Chaos could help them go away. So chaos is probably the best outcome if we indeed are resolute in expanding the war, as we are planning. Of course, there are international circumstances that may bar this possibility from being realized. We are, after all, only a small country, a small nation. But we should have no illusions that anybody else will solve our national security problems. Because nobody will fight Hamas or other terrorists in Gaza and endanger their own soldiers. We've seen the Saudis running away from Yemen, the Emiratis. Why should they behave differently in Gaza? Therefore, this dream of having some kind of Arab consortium of dealing with Israel's security problems is dangerous to Israel, as there are other peace dreams, in Israel. And what we should make sure to have freedom of military action. This is the most important outcome of any Israeli campaign in Gaza. Thank you, and I'll take now their questions for our illustrious panel. One question is, and anybody is welcome to respond. Is it wise to go back and forth in parts of Gaza as we did in the past?
I think I might be able to give you a perspective here from the British experience.
Go ahead.
So the IDF policy so far has not been to take and hold ground. And that comes with advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage is that Hamas have the chance to reclaim the territory that's just been fought over. The advantage, though, is that the IDF is not fixed. And this is more tactical than strategic. But the question here is, you're trying to do four things when you attack an enemy: find them, fix them in place, strike them, and then exploit your success. And what we found in Afghanistan and Iraq was by taking and holding ground, we were doing the enemy's find and fix for them. And of course, the Hamas fighters in Gaza are using very similar tactics to the Taliban in terms of IEDs and ambushes. And when you try and hold ground, if you're not simultaneously seizing the entire Gaza Strip and defeating Hamas in one go, you're giving them the opportunity to ambush your own troops and inflict quite significant casualties on them. So this is a policy that has both upsides and downsides. And the challenge for the IDF is, if they go in and hold ground, is how do they deter Hamas from conducting those kinds of attacks, which actually has the opposite effect to what Efraim was just talking about, where freedom of maneuver is everything. If you can't maneuver, you can't operate. And holding ground comes with that danger that you negate your own ability to maneuver. So it's about finding the right tactical balance, I think. That's more tactical than strategic, but hopefully useful.
The next question is, will Israel be successful if all Gaza is conquered in preventing weapons for Hamas from entering Gaza? Amidror?
Maybe I can answer that, because I think that this answer was already been answered. The gate to most of the smuggling of weapons to Gaza was the Philadelphia corridor and Rafiah exchange. And since May, when we have successfully closed the corridor and dealt with all the underground tunnels, and we closed the Rafiah exchange, the smuggling into Gaza gone almost to zero. I'm saying almost because there is a developing attempt to use drones in order to smuggle weapons. In that way, you can also only smuggle light weapons in small numbers, but it's still something we deal with. And the second part is that Israel have managed, alongside the things that we didn't do, but we did successfully, dealt with the entire military industry of Hamas. All the military industries that Hamas have built during the last 2 decades, especially since we left Gaza in 2005, are all being destroyed by the IDF during the war in Gaza. So they cannot build new weapons, and they don't have the ability to smuggle, at least not big numbers. And we should keep our position in the Philadelphia corridor, and we should try to deal with the only way that Hamas today is gaining new ammunition, new explosive at least, by the using IAF bombs who didn't explode, and they are using the explosives that are in them.
Is anybody on the panel knowledgeable about the numbers of terrorists released by Israel since the beginning of the war and its effects?
I don't know the exact number, but most of them had been released into the West Bank. And up till now, because of the very intensive operations of the IDF in the West Bank, we don't see any big change in the terror operations done by the Hamas and Islamic Jihad in the West Bank. For the long range, it is too early to judge what will be the implications, but no question that at least some of them will renew their membership, active membership in the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. But you have to understand that now, since the last 6 months, the level of intense of the IDF operations in the West Bank is totally different than what was before the war. And this is why we succeed to neutralize much of their capabilities inside the West Bank. Of course, it is not a zero terrorist actions, but it is not more than before the war, and probably in some areas less.
Do we have any evaluation of the ability of the IDF to mobilize the reservists needed for expanding the campaign? This is something that is on the table.
May I answer this one?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes. So, as the father of 2 reservists, fighting reservists that have been called for the 4th time now, and I think Erez is also the father of reservists that have been called.
Me too.
Very good. I think we all know the spirit of the reservists. This is very difficult personally for them, very difficult for their families, for the wives. However, they are fully committed to the goals. They are fully committed to security in Israel, and their main goal, and I'll tell you because my son brought his commanders, his company commanders home to do some like a steak party here. They are fully committed, and the main interest that they have is to make sure that their sons, their newborn sons, the next generation will not have to fight in Gaza. So I think we are on the verge of a very strategic, a wonderful strategic change for Israel in the Middle East. And I think this generation of reservists understand the magnitude of what we are doing now, and they will go and fight in Gaza, regardless of this very difficult personally, business, whatever, to make their living is very difficult, but they are doing it in full spirit.
I want to add something. There are 2 tests in Israel for the viewpoint of the Israelis relating to this question. One is how many reservists are coming when they are 3 times, have to go 3 times a year or few hundred days every year to active service. And the second one, which is not less important, is what is the percentage of new soldiers at the end of the high school going into fighting units, and the level of volunteering to the fighting brigades, infantry, armor, and engineering is very, very high, higher than before the war. And this is it is giving you the spirit of the young generation and their families, because at the end of the day, at the age of 18, what you hear in the family, what is the pressure of the family is very important. It is not the number and the percentage is less than before the war, it is higher than before the war. So this is, you have 2 sensors. One is the percentage of reservists who are ready to go to active service when they are called, and it is between the different units. It is between around 80-85%, and the percentage of the young generation volunteering to the fighting units, it's higher than before the war.
Still, we must admit that we have a problem with manpower, a shortage of manpower.
Yes, but it's not connected to this question.
No,
We have a small, Efraim, we have a very small military. We have a small army. we have to take care of that. But this is a situation. This is and in the it's not related. We have to increase our military force. This is no doubt that we have to do it.
Another question is about the tunnels. It seems that we were probably over optimistic in reporting the extent of the destruction of tunnels. Every day we hear about additional tunnels, and I heard and read that Hamas is continuing to build tunnels, which is bewildering, knowing that we have great control of what comes into the Gaza Strip. Anybody wants to address this issue?
I think Erez is our specialist on those issues.
On tunnels.
Yes.
Yes, I think that he was nominated now, if he's not.
Erez, it's your floor. Unmute yourself.
Sorry, but I think I've lost the connection for a second. So if you will repeat, I'll be happy to answer. You hear me? Because I'm not sure.
Yes. What is your view about the
Tunnels.
situation? The tunnel situation. We spoke. We said many times that we are in a good situation. Now we understand that there are more tunnels than we expected.
Again, if you're looking on the numbers, so the numbers are not in our behalf. If Israel assumed that there is about between 600 to 700 kilometers of tunnels in Gaza, and we are talking about approximately 150, maybe on 200 that we have managed to destroy so far. And you have to remember that digging up new tunnels, it's not so complicated because of the ground, the sand in Gaza on one hand, and the very, very cheap manpower that you have there. People for a few cents per hour will dig for you happily. What we put on priority is to destroy all the tunnels who are coming near to the Israeli border, to the fence. And in that area, we have managed in a much higher percentage. You never can say 100, but I think that we're getting not far from it, and doesn't mean that we will not be able to found a new tunnel tomorrow. But this is something that you should work on. And the second thing is we are prioritizing dealing with what we call strategic tunnels. So not reaching maybe the 700 kilometers, but taking all the strategic points, all the major crossroads of those tunnels, and destroyed them, will affect the ability of Hamas to use the tunnels. You have to understand that what we call metro is an underground net that goes from Rafiach to Beit Hanun in the south, to Beit Hanun in the north, and going from east and west from one side to another. It won't go before we will finish to deal with Hamas as an organization, and to make sure there is no area in Gaza, as there is today, that the IDF didn't operate there yet. And I think that if the current operation will be carried out the way that we try to plan it, I think that's what will happen eventually. But after the first 2-3 months of a very big simultaneously ground force attack, we were still viewing a year or two of cleaning the underground and the above ground facilities, and that will still leave Israel a lot of and the idea for a lot of work to do.
The next question is, why not explore the offer by Arab countries hostile to Hamas, Egypt, Morocco, UAE, Saudis, which have informed Washington of willingness to take responsibility for the strip, including boots on the ground in coordination with Israel and the IDF?
I want to answer. This plan didn't put any prerequisite. What it said that at the end it will be understood by Hamas that they don't have any reason to stay and they will disarm themselves. From our point of view, it's a huge mistake. That should be the prerequisite, that if Hamas disarm itself, all that plan can be implemented. If Hamas will remain with all its capabilities, at the end of the day, we will find ourselves in a Lebanese situation in which there is a big shallow construction called, I don't know what, probably the Palestinian Authority, and then under which within it, Hamas is growing, becoming stronger, as Hezbollah did in Lebanon. So from our point of view, it's an unacceptable plan because it is leading to a war situation in which we cannot act inside Gaza Strip when Hamas is growing and becoming stronger and stronger.
Do you know what is American position on?
I don't know. The Americans are very ambiguous about the plan that they have. It's going from Riviera on the Mediterranean to a combination of Arab states. I don't know what is the exact plan of the Americans.
Assuming that Israel will expand the war, how much do you think the international community will allow us to continue the destruction of Gaza and the human cost? International legitimacy is an important factor.
Yes, it is a very important factor, I agree. But when it is coming to the existence of Israel, the security of Israel, with all due respect to the international community, it's the responsibility of the state of Israel and the government of Israel. And it will not be the first time in which we are acting against the international community point of view to secure Israel. It happened in the past and probably will happen in the future. Of course, we have to see what can be to make people understand and leaders understand why we are continuing the war in Gaza. It's not easy because the picture coming out of Gaza are horrible pictures. The situation in Gaza is not easy. It's a huge battlefield in which there are so many people living in. I'm very pessimistic about the idea that to help them to immigrate. I don't see who is ready to host them outside the Middle East or inside the Middle East. But we have to make whatever is needed to fulfill the decision that at the end of the war, Hamas will not remain inside Gaza as a military organization and will not have the ability to rebuild itself.
I want to add to that because I think that the part of the answer of that question is basically depends on the way that we are acting. Because when Biden said don't go to Rafah, and he said don't, Kamala Harris set on the maps, and Netanyahu said we will go to Rafah even if we have to fight with stones and the sticks. I think that the message was clear and understood, and we went there and we did what we need to do. The same thing happened in Lebanon, and hopefully it will happen soon in Iran as well, with the support of the Trump administration. And I think that what we see now in Gaza is Israel not being clear enough on her way of action. I think that this delay of action after the second ceasefire ended more than a month ago And I think that the fact that we didn't start immediately with much more firm actions of deporting and helping Gazans to immigrate, and the numbers that doesn't really count because it happens now in small numbers. I think that this is something that we should elaborate and we should push forward as much as possible, because the world and President Trump and his administration should see that we are really committed to that. And I think that if they would have seen that Israel is really committed and believe in that as a solution, that we would see it advancing much farther than it is today. And just remember the fact that during the last war in Syria, 6.8 million Syrians have left their country and went all around the globe, mostly to Europe. So here we talk only about 1.5 million, much smaller number. Most of them are refugees. So even by law, international law, the way of finding them another home should be easier. And I think that we should push forward to make it happen. Not to wait till someone will do the work for us.
What can we do about the
Our Turkey, remember that in North Syria there was a country called Turkey. We have Egypt. The Egyptians are not ready to accept even one refugee if he's not coming with many dollars in his pocket. The chance that the Egyptians will behave towards the Palestinians like the Turks towards the Syrians is zero. So I'm very pessimistic about the ability to find the countries which host that will be ready to host the Palestinians, unlike the situation of the Syrians versus Turkey.
Moreover, the Syrians were not educated in Hamas schools. I don't think the West particularly is very happy accepting graduates of Hamas education. Another question is, how do we relate to the pictures coming out of Gaza, which some people see parallel to pogroms committed to Jews throughout history? And some say that we'll lose the war because of that. This question comes from Scandinavia, I believe.
This is probably firmly
not a surprise.
Look, I think there has been a messaging disaster for Israel from this war, and I think not enough perhaps was done in terms of explaining what's happening and also allowing Hamas to have that information dominance in the world's media. Because if you know how the ecosystem of the media works, the famous correspondents, the big channels, they all have fixers on the ground in Gaza that feed them stories and feed them video footage. And of course, all of those fixers are connected to Hamas. They wouldn't be allowed to do the job if they weren't. And okay, so we're now seeing examples of that Hamas connection being exposed. Certainly BBC Arabic have been exposed, CNN have been exposed, but that's 20 months down the line. And they've had 20 months of free run at showing the world what they want the world to see. And also the international media in a 24/7 news cycle where everyone's racing to get the story out first isn't doing the checks that they would have done in the past, and they perhaps would have had a slightly more ethical approach to their journalism, and they're lazy. So if one channel runs a story, 5 more channels will run that story without checking. And so Israel's operating in this ecosystem that is loaded against them, because the very point of origin for almost everything coming out of Gaza is a Hamas-connected fixer working on the ground. I think the one thing that has been missed also is that Gaza is just what urban war looks like. If you look at Caen in Normandy in 1944, it looks like Gaza does now. If you look at any of the ISIS cities that were fought through, like Mosul or Raqqa, that's what it looks like. And I think the difference here is that it's the first social media war where you can get those images onto your phone within minutes of an airstrike happening. And I think everyone has been wrong-footed in how to respond to this phenomenon. Israel has been wrong-footed. The kind of people who are like myself, abroad, that are broadly supportive of Israel's efforts, we've been wrong-footed. And I think there's a sort of paradigm here for information warfare going forward that gives everyone a lot of lessons. But unfortunately, once the narrative is lost, there's very little you can do to get it back. And I think that's the challenge Israel is going to face. It'll be very, very hard to change anyone's mind at this point. So you either stop or you keep going, and keep going is clearly the right answer.
Okay, thank you very much to all our panelists. Brigadier General Gabi, you want to say an ending sentence?
First of all, I want to thank everybody because I think it was a reflection of the quality of JISS. We have different opinions, all of them opinions that come from experts, and that's the point that we stand for. And I think this was very interesting and very telling. On top of that, I would argue that there was a way to have all the different opinions put in one place and not in contradiction. Because what the government is trying to do, in my mind, is to have a free lunch. So they pretend to be committed to an operation that would take over the entire Gaza Strip and do whatever it was described here by Gabi and Erez. But at the same time, they keep open the option that, and want to see this option open, that the pressure by itself is going to convince Hamas to accept some sort of a hostage deal on the way before the full taking over of Gaza is going to be executed. And the problem is that Hamas is probably not going to go for any hostage deal before they are really convinced that we are going to take over the Gaza Strip. Because unless they are kicked out of Gaza, they're still going to be able to say that they won the war. Only when they are kicked out of Gaza, they might say that they are not kicked out, have not won the war. And this is a problematic situation. And in the meanwhile, what we can do is take advantage of this ongoing attacks on Hamas that weakens the organization gradually, in order to have less opposition once we take over the Gaza Strip, if we take over the Gaza Strip at the end of the day, because we all spoke about the fact that this is not going to be a walk in the park. It's going to be costly and it's going to be painful. And we have to weaken Hamas as much as we can before we enter, so that they might accept the deal that we are looking for and leave Gaza on their own will, and release the hostages. This is what we are all trying to accomplish. It's very difficult, but this is the only way through which we can be in a position where we can say that Hamas did not win the war. We paid a heavy price anyhow, but Hamas did not win the war. That's very important as a message for the future, and not only for the future of the conflict between us and the Palestinians, but also for the future of the conflict between us and the rest of the extremists that are all over the Middle East, and Iran is first amongst them. But it's not the only extremist power playing a role in the Middle East. So I again thank everybody, and especially you, Efraim, for handling it so well. And thank you, everybody, and to all our viewers. Thank you very much for being patient until now.
Shalom from Jerusalem.
Shalom.